What's going on, everybody? I'm your host, Ben Ballion, back with another episode of the Sports Pod. And today I'm going to get into the Brooklyn Nets. Nets World, it's your chance, your episode. I never talk about the Nets. One last thing before I hit the intro. If you want to have your voice featured on the Sports Pod, dial the number 848-305-8073 and leave a voicemail with your sports questions and takes. All right, I'll get into all of it on the other side of the intro. Hit it. All right, let's get to the action with the Brooklyn Nets. And I want to start with the head coach, Jordi Fernandez, because in his first year as a head coach in the NBA, he's coaching the Brooklyn Nets. And this Nets roster, he's not particularly strong. There's not a ton of talent. There's some solid pieces, don't get me wrong, but he's really gotten the Nets to buy in, and he has control of the locker room. Like, that's the thing. No matter how good a head coach is, if he can really grasp like the players' opinions, like the players speak highly of him, and the players buy into his system, and the players enjoy playing for him, the team is going to be better. You saw with Steve Nash, who was the last head coach of the Nets, he wasn't like, the players were not committed to his system because they let Kevin Durant run the franchise and they let Kyrie Irving choose their guy, and that wasn't the answer. The GM Marks made a franchise decision. He made an executive decision to fire Steve Nash and hire Jordi Fernandez. It's a good move. I've really done over in Brooklyn so far, and I think it's going to continue. I think the Nets are trending upwards. They were on this like rapid incline, signing Kyrie, signing KD, trading for Harden, and then it all started to go downhill like this. And then they traded Kyrie and KD within like 6 or 7 days. James Harden got traded to the Sixers as well. I think that happened before, though, because Ben Simmons was on the roster, and things were just going downhill. Mikal Bridges was the best player on the team. Bridges emerged for the rest of the season that KD got traded away. He played at his peak in a net uniform. I think he'll be more talented on the Knicks. He'll fit in better. He'll play better. He won't score as much, but he'll play better defense, and he'll fill a bigger role than he was on the Nets. Cam Thomas also emerged as a potential number one option that this franchise can go forward with. The thing with Cam Thomas, though, looking at his stats right now, he doesn't pass. He's averaging 25 points, 3 assists. Like, as a point guard, he's supposed to pass the ball. He's supposed to facilitate. He's supposed to run the offense. That's something he's never done, and that's why it took him so long to get real playing time. Like, everybody knew he could score the basketball. When there was that stretch when KD got traded away and all the new guys hadn't gotten ready to play with the Nets yet, they weren't playing yet, Cam Thomas was scoring 30 points a game. I get he was shooting like 50 shots a game as well, but he can score at a high volume. He just doesn't pass enough. He doesn't really have to rebound. That's more Nick Claxton, Dorian Finney-Smith, Trendon Watford, all those guys. But the only thing he can do is score. And if you're going to keep him as a shooting guard, who's a shoot first type of guy, I'm going to throw up as many shots as I can in this game, that's fine. But then is Dennis Schroeder your point guard? Is he the option? And I get this is a metaphorical punt year for the Nets. They weren't supposed to compete. But moving forward, I think Sean Marks has to answer these questions if the Nets want to return to relevancy within the next 2 or 3 years here. I think Cam Thomas can be your shooting guard. I don't see a problem with that. The question's going to be now, who's your point guard? Who's running the offense, facilitating, and manipulating defense, is just taking control. They don't have a leader right now. That's a big problem. And then another younger guy who's been in the league for a while, starting to really like prove himself, is Nick Claxton. He doesn't score a ton. He averages 9 points a game, but his rebounding is where he makes his money. He averages 7 rebounds a game, with about 2 of them coming on the offensive side of the ball. He can rebound. He can dunk. He is someone I could see like being the Nets center 3-4 years down the road when they're trying to, I don't know, be a playoff team, trying to contend. And this could all be wrong if the Nets don't make the right decisions in the draft and free agency at the trade deadline, especially. And I'll get to the trade deadline and what that's gonna bring for the Nets in a couple minutes. So stay tuned for that. But I do think that Nick Claxton is like the center he's gonna be the guy as a center for the Nets for years to come, unless they end up trading for Giannis or Embiid or something like that. Obviously, it's gonna change. But the Nets will be able to get by with the center, the skill level of Nick Claxton. I don't think they're gonna win an NBA Finals with him, but that's not gonna be the goal anytime soon. So for now, Nick Claxton gets the job done. But in the future, this 5-6 years down the line, it might be time to upgrade once he's hitting like 30, 31. Maybe you could get value assets back in a trade that includes Nick Claxton. All right, now let me get to what the trade deadline is going to bring for the Brooklyn Nets. So let me just list off the players I think will be gone: Dennis Schroeder, Dorian Finney-Smith, maybe Noah Clowney, Shake Milton. Those are the guys. I think they try to get rid of Ben Simmons, but they're unsuccessful. And anyway, Ben Simmons, like he's played basketball this year. He's played 17 games. The Nets are 10-13. So he's played 17 out of 23 games. He's only missed 6 games. That's pretty good for Ben Simmons standards. And it's not like he's been this awful player either. If you look at his stats, he averages 6 assists a game to about 2.5 turnovers. He's averaging 5 points, 5 assists. And it's not, I know Ben Simmons is making a huge amount of money, a huge lump sum of money. But at this point, you're not expecting Ben Simmons to be a top guy, a top scorer, a top assist man, a rebounder in the NBA. So for what you're getting from him, I'm not mad at it. I mean, yeah, you could have other guys. You could have him produce a lot more, and it would take the pressure off some other guys. And it's not like you're winning, so the pressure's not really on anyone. You're not expected to win. But maybe Dorian Finney-Smith can, I don't know, maybe he doesn't have to be as important to this team. Maybe he could take a step back. There's not really any guys that I look at. There's so many guys that like play consistent minutes. There's only 2 guys on the roster. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 guys are averaging 5 minutes or more in a game. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 are averaging 7 or more. That's an extended rotation. Tibbs would never. But I guess it might be the Jordi Fernandez way. You know, we see him coming over from the Sacramento Kings. He was an assistant coach over there. And we'll see what he can do now until the trade deadline. Try to make these guys play up until they eventually get shipped off. So whatever teams are contending, maybe I doubt the Knicks make a trade with them, but maybe it's the Lakers trying to bolster their roster. Maybe the Suns are trying to add a piece to really put them over the top. Maybe it's a team in the Eastern Conference like the Magic. They've been plagued with injuries. Maybe they need another guy that can really play for them. So there's going to be a lot of options at the trade deadline for the Nets. I think they will sell. I think it's inevitable. I think it's the right move. But it's going to be a matter of what teams are these guys going to, and how much is it going to knock the Nets out of contention, and what percentage are they going to have in the draft lottery of the number 1 overall pick? Because that's the prize over here for the Nets. They're not going to make the playoffs. They might sneak into the play-in tournament. They're 10-13 right now. Just looking at the standings, because I have to do this in every episode. You look at They're the 8th seed right now, and they're half a game in the no, they're a game and a half in front of the 11th seed, which would knock, or no, in front of the 13th seed, which would knock them out of the in-season tournament. So they can make the in-season tournament. I don't think they will, or not the in-season tournament, to the play-in tournament. I don't think they end up qualifying for that. I think they trade off. They get draft picks. They are, and the other thing I want to mention this. I'll get to it in a second. They have a ton of draft picks, but they'll stockpile some more draft picks, and then look, maybe get the number 1 overall pick in the draft. Then you draft Cooper Flagg, another one of these unicorn players. He could play the 3, the 4, the 5, handles, 3-pointers, whatever. And then also, if I look at the Nets draft picks over the next couple years, they have a ton of draft picks that they've recuperated from the Kevin Durant trade and the Mikal Bridges trade. If I'm looking at Fanspo, 2025, they have 1, 2, 3, 4 first rounders. 2026, they have 1. 2027, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 29, they have 1. They have 3 in 2029, and then 2030, they have 1 as well. So that's going the rest of the 2020s. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 30. No, 13, 14, 15. They have like 15 first picks in the next the next 5 drafts. That is ridiculous. They are loaded. Say one of these drafts they hit on the next, I don't know, the next who's like a 10th overall draft pick that ended up being insane. It doesn't matter. Then they hit the next Kevin Durant, because I doubt they'll have the number 1 overall pick any years. And KD wasn't a number 1 overall pick. That's the first name that came to mind. I have no idea why. Say they hit on one of those guys, because they're not going to be relevant for the next 5 years. I would say, unless they make some huge splash in free agency and Sean Marks turns into the Nets version of Leon Rose, which that would be a miracle for Nets fans. It would never happen. The Knicks are going to dominate for the rest of this decade at least. Unless they have that moment and they sign their Jalen Brunson, the Nets are not going to be relevant. And those draft picks are all going to be lottery picks. They're all going to be atop the draft. And they're all going to be picks that the Nets shouldn't miss on. I would assume they have 15 picks. I would say 9 or 10 of them are going to be top 10 picks. Actually, no, I wouldn't, because they have Knicks picks, they have Milwaukee picks. So I'm going to say 5 or 6 picks are going to be top 10 picks. Those are picks that you should be hitting. And I know they don't pan out often, but you should be hitting on those picks. That's the best way to turn your franchise around. It's not by signing a big-time player in free agency. It's by drafting and having consistent drafts where you take players that are going to make an impact on your team for years to come, whether it's first-round picks or second-round picks. And that's the other aspect of the draft. Not just drafting good players in the first round is not good enough. You need to hit on some second-round picks as well. I'm not saying these guys need to be all-stars, but you need to hit on like rotation players, higher end role players, as I like to call them, with those second overall picks. That's where you should be picking, like your Deuce McBride, your campaign, because I have a Knicks audience. That's where like that's the equivalent of who you should be taking in the second round. Those are the type of guys if you want to be an NBA Finals contender. But I think the Nets are in a good spot. And the last thing I want to get to, and I'll spend a little bit of time on this to wrap up this episode. Should Nets fans be happy with the team winning, or would it be better for them to tank? You never want to be a tanking franchise. As a fan, you never want to watch that unless you're the Giants and the first overall pick means something and it's like a huge draft class and this and that. The Nets, it's highly unlikely that they're going to get the first overall pick. And outside of Cooper Flagg, maybe there's gonna be Dylan Harper, maybe it'll be Ace Bailey, but there's not a ton of guys that I really think are gonna like turn your franchise around in this year's draft. So why not win some games? Maybe you hit on a 9th, 11th overall pick. Maybe you hit on one of those guys and he becomes your franchise player out of nowhere. But that is very unlikely. And the other thing that's unlikely, I already mentioned it, is the Nets getting the first overall pick. So why not win? It's not going to hurt your franchise too much. And even if you don't end up with the highest lottery odds, we saw what the Hawks did this year with the lottery. They had like 5%, I think. And then in baseball, we saw what the Guardians did this past year as well. They had even worse odds, and they got the number 1 overall pick. So winning is probably not the worst option for the Nets right now. And I don't think fans should be down on the team because they're winning and they want to tank. It just doesn't make sense to me. You want to see what you have in these guys, especially because what I mentioned earlier in the episode when I talked about the Nets with the trade deadline is you want these guys to be playing at a top tier at their ceiling when the trade deadline comes around. That way that you're going to recoup the maximum amount of value for these guys at the deadline. And then once that happens, you're not going to be as good of a franchise. You're going to get back some random no-name players from these trades, but a lot of picks. And those no-name players will go on. They're not going to win a lot of games, but you're going to be tanking. You're not tanking necessarily. You're not going to be winning games, which is what you want and what you want for the lottery. Overall, though, there's like you never want to tank, and there's no purpose in tanking this early into the season for the Nets, especially right now when they can be competing for a play-in tournament appearance the rest of the season. I need to wait till the middle of January to really make my decision on if I think the Nets should sell off or they should keep their pieces, because the Eastern Conference isn't like super special this year, and the Nets might have a chance at the play-in tournament. All right, that's going to do it for this episode. If you want to have your sports questions and takes featured on the Sports Pod, dial the number 848-305-8073. Also, make sure to check out all the links down in the description below to check out my socials. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking/following. And most importantly, keep it locked with the Sports Pod.